The New York Giants select Daniel Jones, quarterback.
Every year, at least one team in the NFL draft makes a controversial pick that leave experts scratching their heads. Last season, it was the Falcons, who took Michael Penix 8th overall just weeks after signing Kirk Cousins to a lucrative deal. Before that, it was the Giants, taking a projected third-round quarterback Daniel Jones 6th overall. So in honor of this year's NFL draft, we're taking a look at some of the biggest mistakes in draft history. Whether that's selecting a kicker in the first round, drafting the wrong player, or simply missing your draft pick altogether. In the 2003 draft, the Minnesota Vikings sat 7th overall, and were looking to trade down with the Baltimore Ravens, who aimed to select top quarterback prospect Byron Leftwich. However, when it came time to their turn, they let the clock wind all the way down to 0 without finalizing a trade, meaning officially they had passed on their pick, allowing Jacksonville to swoop in from the 8th spot and nab Byron Leftwich for themselves.
The Jacksonville Jaguars select Byron Leftwich, quarterback from Marshall.
While the Vikings front office was still reeling from their mistake, the Panthers, who held the 9th pick, raced up to the podium and drafted left tackle Jordan Gross, the top player on Minnesota's board.
Minnesota can run up at any time with their pick, but Carolina's going to beat them to the clock.
Things would all work out in Minneapolis as the Vikings finally picked defensive lineman Kevin Williams, who would go on to be one of the best interior linemen of his generation. Prior to 1977, the NFL draft consisted of an astonishing 17 rounds, 10 more than we see today. With such a large number of selections, it's understandable that some teams would take a major risk in the later rounds on the off chance that it pays off. However, in the 17th round of the 1972 draft, the Atlanta Falcons would make perhaps the strangest pick in NFL history. Coach Norm Van Brocklin announced while making the move, "Do we want the roughest, toughest SOB in the draft?" and proceeded to draft 64-year-old John Wayne. Yes, the actor. Believe it or not, Wayne actually played college football at USC, over 40 years before being drafted. Commissioner Pete Rozelle would reject the pick and force the Falcons to select a real player. Almost every NFL season, one franchise decides to go all in on a particular player and trade away future draft picks to move up and select their guy. The San Francisco 49ers have been on both ends of the spectrum, trading up to draft Jerry Rice, the greatest receiver of all time, but more recently, giving up 3 first-round picks for Trey Lance, an all-time bust. Perhaps the worst trade in NFL history, though, belongs to the New Orleans Saints, who gave up every single pick in the 1999 draft, alongside a first and third rounder the following year, all in order to select running back Ricky Williams. General manager Mike Ditka believed the solution to all the Saints' problems was to run the ball. What he failed to realize, however, was that a running game takes more than just a talented back. New Orleans finished 3-13, Williams was disappointing, and Ditka was fired after the season. Much like Saquon Barkley, when Ricky Williams was traded to a competent franchise, the Miami Dolphins, in 2002, he flourished and led the league in rushing. General managers aren't the only people to screw up during a draft. Prior to 2016, Laremy Tunsil was slated to be a top 5 pick, with plenty of mocks expecting him to go number 1 to the Tennessee Titans. However, shortly before the draft, Tunsil's Twitter would get hacked, and a video would be posted of him smoking a bong through a gas mask. Baltimore, who desperately needed a tackle, passed at 6 to select Ronnie Staley, and Tunsil continued to slide until pick 14, when the Dolphins mercilessly selected the top talent in the draft. Ultimately, Tunsil went on to become one of the best left tackles in the league for Miami and Houston, before being traded to the Washington Commanders this past offseason. The Raiders are known to be fond of selecting unorthodox players in the first round of the NFL draft. Recently, this has proven disastrous, as a majority of their first-round picks have turned out to be all-time busts, in more ways than one. However, perhaps the greatest first-round shock came when they selected kicker Sebastian Janikowski in the first round back in the 2000 draft.
The Oakland Raiders select Sebastian Janikowski, kicker, Florida State.
Special teams players are usually reserved for the later rounds, if drafted at all. Yet Oakland decided to use their vaunted first-round pick on said place kicker instead of another first-round talent, mostly because they couldn't afford to pay the salaries of first-round guys. The 2 players drafted after Janikowski, Chad Pennington and Sean Alexander. Ironically enough, despite being a terrible pick, Janikowski stayed with the Raiders for 17 seasons and became one of the most accurate kickers of all time. This wasn't the first time that Oakland had gone off the board for special teams either. Nearly 30 years earlier in the 73 draft, the Raiders selected punter Ray Guy with their 23rd overall selection. Like Janikowski, Guy would become a generational player and was eventually selected into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Lesson learned, don't draft special teams in the first round unless you're the Oakland Raiders. We've seen bad draft picks, missed draft picks, but what about drafting the wrong player entirely? This fate befell the 1982 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who intended to take star defensive end Booker Reese with the 17th overall pick. Instead, there was a miscommunication between the front office and equipment manager Paul Marcucciolo, who was in charge of relaying the pick to the league. In a somewhat muffled voice over the phone, Marcucciolo was told, "We're not going with Sean Farrell, we're going with Booker Reese. Turn it in." Behind Paul, Giants fans are chanting and stomping in anticipation over their next pick. So all he heard was, "Sean Farrell, turn it in." The Bucks, still in love with Booker Reese, traded their 1983 first-round pick to move up and select him anyways. Reese would never pan out in the NFL, and the Bucks began a painful decline for the following decade and a half. It's not too uncommon to see players crying tears of happiness after being drafted into the National Football League. This is assumed to be the case when Cedric Benson nearly broke down after being selected 4th overall by the Chicago Bears in the 2005 draft. The catch? They were tears of sorrow. Benson was so angry and upset at being drafted to Chicago, he cried. Do you blame him? Cedric had made it clear before the draft he had no interest of playing with the Bears, and warned them not to draft him. Despite this, Chicago selected him anyways, intending to make him their lead back. To no one's surprise, Benson never panned out with the Bears, and was released in 2008. Unfortunately for Chicago, however, he would move on to Cincinnati and find success with the Bengals, earning his first 1,000-yard rushing season.
Stayed on his feet.
The eve before the 1974 draft, there was an air of panic and confusion. Somehow, both the LA Rams and New York Jets held 20th overall selections. In those days, the league was responsible for keeping track of draft choices, but the method was rather archaic. It turns out that Washington general manager George Allen had somehow managed to trade his second-round pick to 2 different teams. Despite claiming it was an honest mistake, it wasn't the first time Allen had traded away the same pick twice. He was fined $5,000, and the Redskins were forced to give up their first-round pick to the Rams. Teams have been known to reach for quarterbacks in the NFL draft, blinded by potential and the idea of a franchise-changing player. Often enough, it ends up being the same few organizations who whiff on these prospects, wasting multiple picks to get them. These are some of the worst quarterbacks selected in the first round.
The Cleveland Browns select Johnny Manziel.
The Cleveland Browns were notorious in the 2000s and 2010s for having horrible first-round picks.
The Cleveland Browns select Justin Gilbert, defensive back.
So much so they hired a firm to do an analytical study of all the quarterback prospects primed for the 2014 draft. The study, costing $100,000, told the Browns that the optimal pick was Teddy Bridgewater. Come draft day, however, owner Jimmy Haslam decided he wanted to take the drug-addicted party boy Johnny Manziel. Cleveland were forced to trade up from 26 to 22 just to take the player that 31 other franchises were staying away from. Johnny Football would play in just 14 games for the Cleveland Browns before being cut for poor performance and off-field distractions.
The Oakland Raiders select quarterback Jamarcus Russell, LSU.
Our old friends the Raiders returned for another slot on this list, this time selecting talented QB prospect Jamarcus Russell with the first overall pick. The 6'6", 260 quarterback out of LSU appeared to have all the physical attributes to make him a great quarterback. What he lacked was the mind to go along with it. After holding out of training camp for more money, ultimately receiving the most luxurious rookie contract of all time, Jamarcus was disappointing.
Out of time. Oh, and it's intercepted.
America is the land of second chances, except for when it comes to this dude, Mr. Jabba the Hutt, you fat, slovenly, no good, lazy. Oh, come on, quarterback. Ask any member of the Oakland Raiders who played alongside this dude. This dude should be arrested for thief. He cashed in the money, evidently used it on buying a bunch of donuts, okay? Never gave 2 cents about the Oakland Raiders.
Famously, Coach David Deal handed him blank tapes to test if Russell was watching film and preparing for the season. Jamarcus then walked into the Raiders facility the following morning, talking about studying the blitz packages that didn't exist. Despite offering to play for free, Russell was cut by the Raiders and never played for another NFL franchise. There were 5 quarterbacks selected in the first round of the 2018 draft, 2 league MVPs in Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, as well as Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, both of whom led their teams to the playoffs in 2025. The final of the 5 quarterbacks was the most outspoken.
The Arizona Cardinals select Josh Rosen,
saying there were 9 mistakes made ahead of him after being selected 10th overall by the Arizona Cardinals. Unfortunately for Josh Rosen, this statement would backfire, and after just a single season with the Cardinals, he was traded to the Dolphins, then bouncing around the league as a backup. By 2022, he was out of the league entirely. Search up Josh Rosen on YouTube and you'll find highlight compilations of his lowlights in the NFL. All 9 players drafted above him have remained permanent starters to this day. Who was the real mistake, Josh? Before revealing the worst quarterback choice in the NFL draft, here are some honorable mentions.
the New York Giants select Daniel Jones, quarterback, Duke.
Daniel Jones was projected to be a third-round choice in the 2019 draft. Yet the Giants believed that this was their guy, and reached all the way to 6th overall to take the young QB. Jones would start 6 seasons and lead the Giants to a single playoff win in 2023, before being benched and released midway through the 25 season.
The Jacksonville Jaguars select Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance,
Justin Fields, Mac Jones.
The 2021 draft class was hyped up to be one of the greatest QB classes of all time. Fast forward 4 years later, and it hasn't exactly panned out for a majority of these guys. Mac Jones, Trey Lance, and Zach Wilson have all transitioned into career backups. Justin Fields is starting as a bridge quarterback for his third team, and Trevor Lawrence is coming off an extremely disappointing 4-13 season with Jacksonville. Turns out COVID had more of an effect on the draft class than we anticipated.
the Chicago Bears select Mitchell Trubisky.
This list wouldn't be complete without the inclusion of Mitchell Trubisky, the Bears' number 2 overall selection in 2018. Trubisky had just 13 college starts and was heavily criticized by Gruden directly after being drafted on live television.
There's just too many shots downfield where the ball is off the field of play and it's not catchable.
Trubisky, behind a stellar Bears defense, would lead them to the playoffs in 2018 and 2020, losing both contests.
Oh, he hits the upright again! That's impossible!
He would be released and served as a backup for the Steelers and Buffalo Bills, expected to sit behind Josh Allen once again for the 2025 season. Tack on the fact that Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson were taking later in this draft, and it's certainly one of the biggest whiffs of all time.
San Diego Chargers select quarterback, Washington State University, Ryan Leaf.
Unquestionably, the worst quarterback choice in the NFL draft has to be the San Diego Chargers selecting Ryan Leaf 2nd overall in 1997. Prior to that year's draft, the media was debating back and forth whether the first overall pick should be Peyton Manning or Ryan Leaf, who were far and away the top 2 prospects coming out of college. Entering the NFL Combine, Leaf missed multiple player interviews, gained almost 20 pounds, and had an attitude described as so self-confident some saw him as arrogant and obnoxious. Obviously, hindsight is 2020. But despite character concerns, the Chargers traded a 3rd, 1st, and 2nd round pick, alongside 3-time Pro Bowler Eric Metcalf to move up 1 spot and draft Ryan Leaf. His time in San Diego proved disastrous from day one, when he'd partied all night with the owner Alex Spanos and yawned through his opening news conference. His rookie season, he would play just 10 games, throwing for under 1,300 yards with 2 touchdowns and 15 interceptions. His biggest lowlight came against the Chiefs in Week 3, in which he completed just 1 of 15 passes for 4 yards, 3 fumbles, and 2 interceptions.
Fourth quarter. Leaf was a twig today.
He would crash out the next day and yell at a San Diego Tribune reporter, fake injuries to play golf, and was deemed so immature NFL legends Junior Seau and Rodney Harrison begged team management to move on and sign a veteran guy. After bouncing around the league, he would abruptly announce his retirement at the age of 26 and move away from the world of professional football. And those are the worst mistakes in the history of the NFL draft. Did we miss anything? Let us know in the comments below as we wait in anticipation for the upcoming 2025 NFL draft.